They say like never meet your heroes, and that is really, really true right now. What's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Ben. I love talking movies and TV and the film and entertainment industry. I work in the entertainment industry, so I just love talking about it and sharing my thoughts on different subjects in the entertainment industry. So if you like what I say, please like and comment and subscribe and follow along. I'd love to have you. But enough about that. Let's get into Inside Out 2 and Pixar, because a lot of stuff came out recently that I really want to talk about. So if you didn't know, IGN just put out an article this past week where they went into the really rough working conditions of Inside Out 2 and just Pixar overall in general, and how it's really not the best place to work anymore. As we all know, Inside Out 2 is the highest grossing animated film of all time at this point. It is the highest grossing Pixar film of all time as well. I mean, those two go hand in hand. But things at the studio have never been worse, at least that's what it seems like. I knew things at Pixar weren't really that great. You know, we had the layoffs that happened earlier this year, and that's the first time layoffs have ever happened at that studio. I know people who've worked at Pixar as well that, you know, it's not all sunshine and rainbows over there. Not every workplace is great, but not every workplace has to be terrible. And Pixar, from what I've heard, was not terrible. It was fine, had its problems just like any other workplace. But this article really shows that just how terrible it's gotten and how bad it's gotten over the past few years. If you haven't checked out the article on IGN, definitely check it out. It's worth the read. It's very long, but I'll try to summarize it here. Basically, Inside Out 2, the working conditions on that film were awful. A lot of people were working overtime. A lot of people were working weekends for about 4 months straight, apparently, which is just insane. So it's called crunch, where you're just like working a lot of overtime, and it happens a lot on animated projects, happens a lot on film projects, just projects in the workforce in general, right? If you have a big project coming up, you need to put in a lot of hours just to finish it. There's a lot of last minute changes, stuff like that. And so it's kind of just a normal thing, in my opinion. Like, it does happen. It's not like outrageously rare that this happens. But if it happens a lot and there's a lot of crunch, that, to me personally, I think that's just poor management in general. And based on this article, I really do think that it's mostly just mismanagement at this point. Like, the details that there were a lot of last minute changes, and there are last minute changes. You always want to try to make it better. But if there's a lot of them, it kind of tells me that there's no real direction. You don't really have a clear vision of what you want to do. So I kind of chalk that up to mismanagement. There are also apparently a lot of colleagues just not doing much, while the other colleagues were on fire and they tried to help them, but like they couldn't. And when there's that like not good balance of workload between the teams and between people, that tells me that it was mismanaged. And apparently people were working jobs they've never worked before, which is weird that there were people who didn't work while also people who were just working all the time, but also never did that job before. That's weird. Like, I'm really kind of curious as to how that happened, but that all to me screams mismanagement. And apparently they had to get like every decision approved by Pete Docter. Pete Docter now runs Pixar. He's taking over from John Lasseter after he got fired for sexually harassing people. And apparently he had to get approval on everything, and it all just bottlenecked up to him. And you're supposed to hire people and like allow them to make decisions and trust them to make decisions, right? Like, theoretically. And when you're not doing that, when you're not trusting people, it proves that you shouldn't have hired them in the first place, and it proves that you don't have good leadership. It proves that you don't have good management, at least in my opinion. So I don't think Pete Docter did a good job managing this film in general. And they say not to blame Pete Docter for all this. Like, in the article, like at least one colleague says, I don't blame Pete Docter for this whole thing, but it doesn't sit well with me, especially for what happens later in the article. Apparently the movie Elio is not doing well either. Like, we could have all assumed that that was going to happen. That movie was supposed to be out by now, so they're having problems with that film. But Pete Docter literally said, we're going to go through this again, and we're going to do what we did on Inside Out 2 with this film as well. So I kind of do blame him. And he had a pretty bad hand for an Inside Out 2, right? Like, that hand that was drawn was terrible. He had to deal with a global pandemic. He had to deal with a WGA strike, which I don't think actually really affected the film, but regardless, he also had to deal with a actor strike as well. So he had a lot of problems on this film. I totally get it. But the fact that Elio is now going to be having problems, and they're going to be doing this crunch schedule again on Elio, tells me that it is mismanagement, because you can make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes, right? You're going to make mistakes as a leader, but if you don't learn from those mistakes, then you're a bad leader. So I do blame Pete Docter for this, just as an outsider looking in, you know? And it's easy to be an outsider looking in, but this tells me that it's poorly managed, and it's just gonna get worse. I'm kind of talking out of my ass here. Like, I don't have a fucking Academy Award, but, you know, just from observing, I don't think that management is that great at Pixar right now, and I don't think that you should do it for Elio again. Personal opinion, but what does that mean? So at the end of Inside Out 2, they had a lot of hours of overtime, they had a lot of crunch schedules, and then it ended with them getting laid off. And they didn't just get laid off, it's actually worse than I thought. So first off, they found out they were getting laid off in January of 2023. Like a year and a half of these people working their fucking ass off on this movie, like crunching away, not seeing their family, not enjoying life probably, all on edge thinking that they may lose their jobs in a year and a half, that all their work is kind of gonna be for nothing. Like, yeah, they'll have a great movie, but at the end of it, they're not gonna have a job. That fucking sucks. Like, those people cannot work that well when they think they're gonna be laid off in a year and a half. That sucks. And after they got laid off, they didn't even qualify for their bonus. So this is something that I didn't even know that happened at Pixar. I knew they didn't pay amazingly, but apparently they pay them not the best. And it's a high cost of living area, Emeryville, like San Francisco Bay, California. But a lot of them take it because they get a good bonus when the movie does well. And historically, most Pixar films have done well. So once the movie crosses a certain threshold, they'll get more money. And that made their like little pay a lot better and made it like actually livable out in that area. But a lot of them got laid off, and because they weren't an active employee after the film came out, after the film crossed that threshold, they didn't qualify for their bonus. This movie made over $1.5 billion, like billion with a B, right? And they laid off all these people right before the movie came out. There was no hope that they would ever get this bonus, even though I'm sure that they knew this movie was going to do well. It feels strategic at this point, right? Like, it feels like they knew this movie was going to do well and they wanted to keep all the money for themselves, so they laid them off right before it and made sure that they didn't qualify for this bonus. Like, shit like this should be illegal. Like, they should get investigated. I think it is legal in this stupid world that we live in, but man, that fucking sucks. Like I said, Pixar has never done layoffs like this to my knowledge, and they laid off some pretty big people. People have been there like 20 years. For instance, the woman who saved Toy Story 2 got laid off. If you didn't know, they detail it in Ed Catmull's book, Creativity Inc. It's a really great read. Loved reading that book. I don't know how I feel about the book now after learning about this. They're working on Toy Story 2 and they're a couple months away from the release, and suddenly the whole movie just starts getting deleted. Like, Woody's arm starts going away, his hat starts going away. It was literally they were watching it get deleted before their eyes. Essentially, the whole movie got deleted by a mistake, and they had no backup or anything like that. But this one lady at Pixar, she saved the entire project. She apparently would go into Pixar, save a copy of the movie on her hard drive, and then bring it over to her home, where she would work from home because she just had a kid. Which is also pretty crazy that she was like working from home in like 99, 98, like work from home. Crazy. But she saved the film. They found out she had a copy of it. She found out that it got deleted. She brought it back in her car, like with it like wrapped up completely. It's a very funny story. Read about it. But she saved the film. They were months away from this releasing, and without her, Pixar wouldn't be where it is today. Pixar would be dead. Like, I think 3D animation might be dead without her. She kind of saved the entire studio. Pixar would be a little footnote, and we would kind of be like, hey, remember like that studio that made Toy Story? That was cool. What happened to them? Oh, they fucking failed. That's all that we were talking about. If anything, there might be a cool documentary about them, but I'm going off on a tangent here. But without her, Pixar would be fucking dead. And they just fucking laid her off. Like, what the fuck? Companies wonder why, like, people don't give a shit about working for them anymore. And then they do shit like this, where the woman who saved the entire company, who saved the entire company's legacy, is now no longer working there. They gave her a good, like, little fuck you goodbye. Like, no shit, people aren't gonna give a fuck about working for any company anymore. The article also gives us just an insight into like all the dumb shit happening at Disney right now. Disney is fully blaming Lightyear's terrible box office run on that like little gay kiss in there, that little... That's what they're blaming the entire box office disaster on for. Like, bullshit. Like, the gaslighting from these executives, it's ridiculous. Yes, that little gay kiss that happens for like half a second, that little peck that's the reason this movie did so bad. You know, the moment that like your crazy racist uncle had an issue with and bitched about on Twitter for 7 months straight, that's the reason why this movie did so bad. It wasn't at all the weird messaging of this movie where people were just genuinely confused about this movie Lightyear. They weren't sure if it was actually in the Toy Story universe, because some reports were saying, yes, this is happening in the Toy Story universe. Other reports were like, no, it wasn't happening in the Toy Story universe. It was just all baffling. There was different voice actors as well, so it's like, why does the toy not sound like the movie? All very confusing questions. And also, there was literally a line at the beginning of Lightyear that cleared the whole fucking thing up. There was a whole line that said, like, in 1995, Andy saw a movie and that's why he wanted Buzz. This is that movie. Like, where was that in any trailer or any teaser? That would have solved everything. But no. Sorry, that's not the reason the movie did bad. It was that little gay kiss. That gay kiss is the reason why people didn't just flood to the theater, right? It wasn't the fact that Disney has been training people to stay at home and watch movies on Disney Plus for the past 2 years. It didn't have anything to do with the fact that the last 3 Pixar films were all released directly on Disney Plus and not in a theater. It wasn't that at all. Also had nothing to do with, movie tickets being expensive, and a family of 4 might be around 50 to $100 depending on where you're at to go take your family out to go see this movie. Instead, you can just wait for it to be on Disney Plus. That is what they trained people to do. That's what they trained their audiences to do. But sorry, no, it was the little gay kiss. That's the reason why Lightyear did so bad. Man, like, these executives, they just want to put all their failures on, like, your homophobic neighbor that's like, it was never going to see this movie in the first place. It's insane that they're just blaming all this shit for all their fucking failures as business leaders. There are plenty of examples of gay characters in animated films, in kids films, doing just fucking fine. Like, Nimona on Netflix had a full-blown gay relationship. Like, that was fully out there. It wasn't like, in Rise of Skywalker, how they had like a little peck, or like in Endgame when like they're like, we're gonna have our first gay character, and it was just a guy kind of talking about it. No, Nimona did a fully like gay relationship on screen. That movie did really well. Across the Spider-Verse was like a whole trans allegory as well, with a lot of trans lives matter flags in the background on like the police, on Gwen Stacy's dad, on his little badge. There's a little trans flag. That's all there. Those movies did fine. So you can't blame this little kiss on the fact that Lightyear was a box office failure. And the reason they don't want to admit that they're wrong is they just don't want to lose their fucking jobs. Like, that's all it is. They want to put the blame on anything and everything rather than themselves, rather than just admit that they're just a bad leader because they don't want to lose their job. I get that, I understand it, but damn, dude, like, admit when you did something wrong. It's fine. My only hope is that this makes Pixar employees unionize. Pixar is not a union studio, but man, after this, I could see why they're gonna hurry up and unionize. Businesses are so dumb. They can treat people like shit. They've been treating people like shit, right? Pixar fully was like, yeah, we don't get paid that well, but sometimes we get a little bonus and that makes it all okay. But these businesses wanted to push them even more, and like they're breaking, and now they might unionize. There hasn't been any calls yet, but I can imagine that they unionize within the next year or two, and boy, they're gonna pay a whole lot more than just paying out that fucking bonus. And this whole thing sucks, right? Like, the brand of Pixar is kind of ruined. They were the top tier animation studio. Without them, 3D animation would not be where it's at today. Everyone kind of tried to replicate their look, right? And now we're kind of tired of it and we're seeing really cool 2D stuff. Anyways, Pixar was huge. Pixar has a great brand. Everyone goes there and they're like, yeah, I'm gonna get a really high quality film. And now, yeah, some of the films have not been the best. Some of them have not been that same high quality. But now, even their highest quality films, Inside Out 2, highest grossing film ever for an animated film, highest grossing Pixar film, is now tainted with just these terrible work conditions and people who got fucked over and laid off. Like, I don't think people are really going to care about this as much as I do. People will still go see the next one, but they really got to be careful, because if this continues, the studio is not going to last. The studio is not going to make high quality work. The studio will fail when morale is down for that low. That's just a fact. So yeah, I guess that's how I'll end this video. I can't end it on a happy note. I can end it on I hope they unionize. I hope they get their power back. But that's about it. I really don't know where to end this, suck a dick, Bob Iger. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Is this whole situation like kind of tarnishing Pixar's name for you? Are you going to watch their films and just think about their overworked employees? Or are you going to just kind of hope for better days and hope that this was a one-off? Let me know in the comments. And if you made it this far, thank you so much. I know not a lot of people make it to the very end of this video, but if you're new and you liked what I say, please like, please comment, please subscribe, please join me. Like I said, I make a new video about every week or so where I talk about the entertainment industry and I talk about my general thoughts on it. So join along if you want to see more. Thanks.